You just got the inspection report back. It's 64 pages long. 64 pages of photos, arrows, highlighted items, words like recommend monitoring and further evaluation suggested, and marginal condition observed. And you're sitting there thinking, did I just buy a disaster? Here's what the Caroline Gow team wants you to know before you read a single word of that report. A long inspection report is not bad news. It might actually be the best news you've gotten in this entire process, because it means your inspector did their job. It means you have real information about the home you're about to own. And it means you're not going in this blind. But none of that helps if you don't know how to read it. So that's exactly what this video is going to do. We're going to walk you through the entire inspection report, what it means, how to triage it, what actually matters, and what you can set aside, and how to use it intelligently when it comes to your negotiation. Whether your report is 40 pages or 90 pages, by the end of this video, you're going to know how to read it like someone who has been doing this for a long time. Let's get into it. Welcome to Living on the North Shore in Chicago. The Caroline Gow team is based in Northbrook, Illinois, and for 24 years, the team has helped buyers and sellers navigate the North Shore real estate market. Northbrook, Glenview, Deerfield, Highland Park, Winnetka, and all the communities in between. This channel exists to give you real, specific, honest information about buying and selling in this market. Not fluff, not generic advice that you could find anywhere else. The real stuff. If this is your first time here, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming. And if you're in the middle of a transaction right now and you have questions, the link to connect with the Caroline Gow team is in the description. Now let's talk about what a home inspection actually is, because there's a lot of confusion about its purpose, and that confusion is exactly why people panic when the report lands in their inbox. A home inspection is not a pass-fail test. And it's not designed to find the reasons to kill a deal. It's not the ammunition for a long list of repair demands. Those are all things buyers sometimes think it is, and all of them are wrong. The purpose of a home inspection is to educate you about the home you are about to own. That's it, full stop. By the time you close on a home on the North Shore, you should know the approximate age of the roof. You should know whether the furnace is 5 years old or 22 years old. You should know if there's any evidence of past water in the basement. You should know the condition of the electric panel, the plumbing, and the sump pump. You should understand the systems in that home well enough to budget for them, plan for them, and live in them with confidence. That's what a good inspector gives you. The report is a roadmap, not a verdict. And here's the single most important thing the Caroline Gow team tells every buyer before they open that report. Every house has issues. Newly built homes generate inspection finding. Homes that were fully renovated last year generate inspection finding. A $400,000 ranch in Buffalo Grove and a $1.4 million colonial in Winnetka will both produce a report with dozens of items in it. That's not a reflection of the home's quality. That's a reflection of the fact that homes are complex mechanical and structure systems, and inspectors are paid to observe and document everything they see. So the length of the report is not the story. The question you're asking as you read it is a different one. The question is, does this home have issues that affect my health and safety, my structural security, or my budget in a way that changes what I thought I was buying? That's the lens. Keep it with you as we go through this. Let's start with how you actually open the report and where to begin reading, because most buyers make the mistake of starting on page 1 and reading straight through, and that's not the right approach. It will overwhelm you. It will make everything feel equally urgent when it isn't. Almost every home inspection report includes a summary section. It's usually near the front. This is your first stop. Not the photos, not page 37, the summary. The summary takes all the findings from the full report and sorts them into categories. Different inspectors use slightly different language, but the categories you're looking for are something like this. Safety hazards. These are items that present a risk to health or safety of the occupants and need to be addressed regardless of anything else. Major defects. These are systems or components that are significantly deficient, not functioning, or at the near or end of their useful life. And maintenance items. These are normal wear, deferred upkeep, and things to add to your future homeowner to-do list. Your job when you open that report is to triage. Pull the safety hazards and the major defects out first. Read those sections in full. Understand what they are. Then, and only then, look at the maintenance item, not as a source of concern, but as a list of future projects. The maintenance items are real. They're useful, but they're not the conversation you need to have today. We'll come back to that. Right now, let's go through the categories of findings that actually matter, the ones that fall into health, safety, and major systems. We're going to walk you through each one with North Shore specific context because the housing stock here has its own characteristics and patterns. Let's start with electrical. Electrical findings are among the most important in any report because they are directly affecting safety. On the North Shore, a significant portion of the housing inventory was built in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. That means some homes still have electrical systems that haven't been fully updated, and there are specific things to look for. Aluminum wiring is one of them. In certain decades, aluminum wiring was used in residential construction as a substitute for copper. It's not inherently dangerous if it was properly installed and has properly been maintained. It does require attention, specifically at the connections where aluminum can oxidize and create heat. If your inspector flags aluminum wiring, it's worth understanding the scope. A licensed electrician can evaluate whether the connections are properly terminated and whether any remediation is recommended. Double-tapped breakers are another common thing. This means two wires are connected to a single breaker in the panel, something that's generally not permitted unless the breaker is specifically rated for it. It's usually a straightforward fix, but it's the kind of thing that matters. And then there are the panel brands. If you've been in this market for any length of time, you may have heard that certain older electrical panel brands that have been documented reliability and safety concerns. The Caroline Gow team isn't going to name brands in this video because every home is different and every finding deserves its own evaluation. But if your inspector flags a panel with recommendation for further evaluation or replacement, take that seriously. This is one of those categories where a follow-up call with a licensed electrician is money well spent. The bottom line on your electrical, if your inspector flagged it as a safety item, it belongs at the top of your list. Now let's talk HVAC, the furnace, air conditioning, and water heater. These are the systems that will eventually cost you money, not because there's anything wrong with the home, just because mechanical systems have lifespans and at some point they need to be replaced. What the inspection report tells you is where you are in that timeline. A furnace in Illinois has typical useful life of between 15 and 25 years depending on the brand, the maintenance history, and how hard it's run. If your inspector notes that the furnace is 22 years old and showing signs of heat exchanger wear, that is not a disaster finding. That is a budget conversation. It means you may be looking at a furnace replacement in the near-term future, and you should factor that into your thinking. The heat exchanger specifically is worth understanding. The heat exchanger is the component that separates the combustion gases from the air that circulates through your home. A cracked heat exchanger can allow carbon monoxide to enter the living space. If your inspector flags a cracked or suspect heat exchanger, that is a safety finding, not just an age finding, and it needs to be addressed before you move in. Air conditioning systems have a similar lifespan, roughly 15 to 20 years with a good maintenance. In Illinois, the AC runs hard in summer. If your inspection was done when the weather was too cold to properly test the cooling system, which is common in spring transactions on the North Shore, your report may note that the AC could not be tested due to ambient temperature. That's standard language. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means testing happened outside the operating window. Water heaters typically run 10 to 15 years. If yours is at 12 years and showing no issues, it's not an emergency, but it's a line item you're going to revisit in the next few years. All of this is useful budgeting information, life planning information. You want to go into home ownership knowing exactly what's going to need attention, and this is what the inspection is designed to give you. Let's move to the roof. Roof findings are probably the most misread section of any inspection report. Buyers see the word roof and they hear expensive. And sometimes that's accurate, but oftentimes it isn't, and understanding the difference is important. Inspectors observe and document what they can see from the exterior. They're not typically walking the roof, they're using binoculars or drone if they have one, and getting up on a ladder to examine sections. What they flag are things like granule loss or asphalt shingles, lifted or misaligned flashing at the chimney or skylights, curling or buckling at the edges, missing shingles, soft spots in the decking. Granule loss on asphalt shingles is one of the most common findings, and it means the shingles are aging. Asphalt shingles are designed with a granule coating that protects the base material from UV exposure. As the shingles age, those granules shed. You'll sometimes see them collecting in the gutter, and it's a sign of a roof that's approaching the end of its useful life. But it doesn't mean the roof is failing today. It means you're in the later chapters of that roof's story. Flashing issues are worth taking seriously. Flashing is the metal material that seals the joints where the roof meets the vertical surface. The chimney, the wall, skylight. Flashing that's lifted, corroded, or improperly sealed is a water intrusion risk. Not hypothetically, actually, this is where leaks start. If your inspector recommends a licensed roofing contractor for further evaluation, that's a reasonable follow-up. A roofer can give you a special assessment of remaining useful life and what repairs, if any, make sense before closing. On the North Shore, that follow-up visit is often worth doing before you finalize your negotiation strategy. Now let's talk about something that comes up in almost every transaction in Illinois, and that's the foundation and basement. Illinois soil is heavy clay. Clay soil expands and contracts significantly with moisture, swelling in wet conditions, shrinking in dry ones. Over decades, that movement creates stress on foundation walls, and that stress shows up as cracking. This is so common on the North Shore that it would be unusual to see an inspection report that didn't mention some form of foundation cracking. Here's what matters and what doesn't. Hairline cracks in a poured concrete foundation, thin vertical cracks that have been there for years and show no signs of active movement are extremely common and generally benign. They happen, they're worth monitoring, they're not a reason for panic. What is worth taking seriously, horizontal cracking in a poured wall, which can indicate lateral pressure from the soil. Stair-step cracking in the block foundation, particularly if it's widening. Any evidence of significant wall displacement or bowing. Cracks that are wide, actively growing, or accompanied by water infiltration. If your inspector flags any of those, a structural engineer evaluation is appropriate, not a contractor who sells waterproofing systems. A licensed structural engineer who can assess what's actually happening and what, if anything, needs to be done. Speaking of water, let's talk about basement moisture because it's one of the most common and most misunderstood findings in North Shore inspection. Staining on basement walls. Efflorescence, the white chalky mineral deposits you sometimes see on block walls. Old watermarks near the floor, high moisture readings on a wall. These get flagged and buyers see them and think this basement flood, and that's not necessarily what moisture evidence in a basement tells you is that water has been present at some point. It does not tell you when, and it doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you whether the problem was stopped 5 years ago or whether it's an active issue today. The follow-up questions are, when was the last time the water was observed? What was done about it? Is there an active sump pump? Is there a perimeter drain system? What does the grading look like on the exterior? Active moisture, visible water, wet walls, a sump pump that's running constantly is a different conversation from historical staining. Context matters enormously on this finding. Your agent should be helping you ask the right question. Now let's talk about something that is very specific to Illinois and the North Shore, and that is radon. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that comes from the breakdown of uranium in soil and rock. It seeps into homes through foundation crack, construction joints, and floor drain, particularly in basements and lower level. You can't see it and you can't smell it. You can't taste it, but it is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the U.S. after smoking. Radon testing is standard practice in Illinois home inspections. A device, usually an electric or continuous monitor, is placed in the lowest livable level of the home for at least 48 hours. The result comes back in picories per liter. The EPA action level is 4 per liter or above. Above that threshold, the EPA recommends mitigation. Here's what our team wants buyers to understand about radon. Elevated radon is common on the North Shore, very common, and it's not a reason to walk away from a home. Radon mitigation is a well-established, highly effective system, a sub-slab depressurization system, essentially a pipe and a fan installed by a licensed mitigator. It draws radon from beneath the foundation and exhausts it above the roof line before it can enter the home. The cost is typically in the range of a few hundred to $1,700, depending on the home configuration. It works, the levels come down, the home is safe. If your test comes back elevated, it becomes a negotiation item. The seller typically agrees to install a mitigation system prior to closing or provide a credit to cover it. It's not a deal breaker, it's just another thing that we need to negotiate. What would be a concern is if a home already has a mitigation system installed and the test still comes back elevated. We don't see this very often, but that suggests that maybe the system is not functioning properly. And that's a follow-up, maybe a service call to see maybe it needs a new fan. I've run into that. But an elevated test on a home without a system already in place, that's manageable and a solvable problem. Let's shift now to something that trips buyers up every single time, and that's learning to separate what matters from what doesn't. Pick up any inspection report and start reading. you will find the bathroom exhaust fan is undersized for the room. The garage door opener reversal is slow. The downspout extension is missing on the northeast corner. The caulk around the master bathtub is cracking. One of the bedroom windows is slightly difficult to open. The garden hose bib has a minor drip. These are real items. They're in the report because the inspector observed them. Every single one of them belongs on a homeowner's maintenance list, but none of them belong on a repair request to the seller. This is one of the most important lessons that our team teaches buyers going into the inspection negotiation, especially on the North Shore, where sellers are often well advised, where deals are competitive, and where backup offers are not unusual on well-priced homes. A buyer who sends a repair request with 20 items on it, most of them cosmetic or minor maintenance, sends a very specific signal. It says this buyer is going to be difficult. It says this buyer is looking for leverage, not legitimate concern. And it puts the entire deal at risk for items that frankly cost less than a weekend afternoon and a trip to Home Depot. The sellers and their attorney read that list. They look for it and think, we'd rather start over than deal with this. And sometimes, more often than buyers expect, they do exactly that. Focus on health and safety. Focus on major defects. One or two well-documented, legitimate items presented professionally through your attorney is 100 times more effective than a long laundry list. Sellers are far more receptive to a reasonable request than to a comprehensive punch list. This is strategy, not emotion. Keep it tight, keep it credible. Now, there's another inspection reality on the North Shore that the Caroline Gow team wants to address directly because it's increasingly common in competitive market conditions, and buyers need to understand before they're in the middle of it. In many transactions right now, particularly on well-priced, well-located homes where multiple offers are possible, buyers are choosing to complete their inspection for information only. That means they go through the inspection, they get that report, and they learn everything there is to know about the home, and they waive the ability to make repair requests as part of their offer strategy. If you're in that situation, the inspection report is not less valuable. It's equally valuable. You know about the home. You know the roof age. You know the electric panel. You know what the sump pump looks like. You have made an informed decision with full information. That's what the process is designed to give you. There is still a provision within the attorney review period for a buyer to cancel the deal if something catastrophic surfaces, a finding so significant that changes the fundamental nature of what was agreed to. That protection exists even in an information-only scenario. You are not locked in blind. You're simply not using the inspection as a negotiating lever for smaller items. What our team sees repeatedly is that buyers who go in with this approach, fully prepared, knowing what they're inspecting and what that knowledge shows, comes out of the transaction calmer and more confident than buyers who go in expecting to negotiate repair because they've reframed the purpose from the start. The inspection isn't there to get you something. It's there to make sure that you know what you're getting. Let's talk about the phrase that shows up in almost every inspection report that almost every buyer misreads. Recommend a further evaluation by a licensed specialist. When you see those words, the natural reaction is alarm. Further evaluation. It sounds like the inspector found something they couldn't handle and it might be very bad. But here's what actually it means. The inspector observes something that falls out of the scope of a general home inspection and warrants a closer look by someone with specific expertise. A chimney, for example. A general inspector does the visual check of the fireplace and the exterior of the chimney, but a full assessment of the flue liner, the firebox, the crown, and the cap, that's a level 2 chimney inspection done by a certified chimney specialist. It doesn't mean the chimney's failing. It means someone with the right tools and training should take the next look. A sewer scope is another common one. In many North Shore transactions, buyers are opting for sewer scope as part of the inspection. A camera run through the main sewer line from the home to the street, looking for root intrusion, cracks, or blockages. The general inspector may recommend it even if they didn't perform it because it's simply outside the scope of the general inspection. Structural concerns get flagged this way too. If the inspector sees cracking or deflection that makes them want a licensed structural engineer get their opinion, recommend further evaluation is the appropriate language. It's not the same as this is a serious structural problem. It's someone with more expertise should take a look before you make final decision. The Caroline Gow team's general guidance treat every further evaluation recommendation as real follow-up item during the inspection period. Not a reason to panic, but a reason to make a phone call. In Illinois, the inspection period runs within the 5 business day attorney review window, and timing matters. If you want a specialist to take a look, you need to schedule it quickly. Your agent should be helping you coordinate that timeline from the moment the inspection report comes in. Let's take a step back and recap what we've covered because there's a lot here, and our team wants you to leave this video with a clear framework in your mind. The purpose of the inspection is to educate you, not to scare you, not to give you leverage, to make sure you know what you're buying. Every house has issues. Every report is long. Length is not a measure of severity. Start with the summary. Triage into 3 buckets: safety hazards, major defect, maintenance item. Read the safety and major defect item. The systems that matter most: electrical, particularly in older North Shore homes. Look for aluminum wiring and panel conditions. HVAC and mechanicals. These are budget items. Know the ages of conditions. Roof. Understand the difference between aging materials and active failure. Foundation and structure. Hairline cracks are common. Horizontal cracking and active movement are not. Basement moisture. Context matters. Distinguish historical staining from active water. Radon. Elevated levels are common. Mitigation's effective and it's a solvable problem. What to set aside: cosmetic items, minor maintenance, observations, anything that belongs on a homeowner to-do list rather than a repair list. How to negotiate: 1 or 2 focused, documented, legitimate safety or major defect items that came up professionally is far more effective than a long list. In a competitive market, restraint is strategy. Information-only inspections are real and sometimes the right move. The knowledge you get from that report is yours, regardless of whether you negotiate. Further evaluation recommendations are follow-up items, not emerge. Schedule them quickly within your inspection window. And when you understand what the report is actually telling you, the whole process feels completely different. You're not a buyer sitting at a table hoping the news is good. You're a buyer who knows exactly what they're walking into. And that's a position of real confidence. The Caroline Gow team has been walking North Shore buyers through inspection reports for 24 years. Every transaction is different. Every home is different. But the framework is always the same. Focus on what matters, set aside what doesn't, and make decisions from a place of knowledge rather than fear. If you are under contract right now and you have questions about your inspection report, what something means, how serious it is, how to approach it with the seller, reach out to our team. That link is in the description. The team is based in Northbrook and serves buyers across North Shore, and there's no question too small when you're in the middle of a transaction. If this video was helpful, subscribe and hit the bell. Share this with someone you know who is buying a home right now, especially if they're in Illinois, where the inspection process has its own rhythms and nuances that this video covers specifically. A lot of buyers are going to open a long report this week and feel the stomach drop. Share this video with them before they do. I'm Caroline Gow with Real. See you on the next one.